I'm Femi OK.
And I'm Malika Bilal. The Roma people are the largest ethnic minority group in Europe, but they often experience hate and social exclusion. However, many Roma artists, especially women, are using their work to fight sexism, racism, and discrimination. Today we speak with a few, including the co-founder of a feminist theater group, to learn how they're challenging stereotypes about their community.
You're now in the stream and we're live on Al Jazeera and YouTube, so be sure to leave your comments on YouTube and your questions. We will do our best to get them into this show.
I am Ivanka Mariposa-Chumkova. I am Roma from Czech Republic, and I am activist working with the people on the ground. And I am in the street.
2005 was the start of Europe's decade of Roma inclusion. It has been years since the multinational initiative wrapped up. Its aim was to close the gaps between Roma and the rest of society. But Roma communities continue to experience hate as well as social and economic discrimination.
In response, Roma activists are using the power of art to combat negative stereotypes about their lives and culture. Some of these artists, like Romania's feminist Giuvlipen theater company, particularly hope to bust myths about the lives of Roma women, held both within and outside the community. Have a look at one of the group's performances.
Giuvleacă menaștic, che se muș. Ura de rasă, doamnă! Ăsta-i în mai mare păcat. Cum îi zice femeie?
Nu-i asta. O copilă să se gândească la moarte.
Și până la urmă, tot cum vor ei.
So how are Giuvlipen and other Roma using their activist art, tell their own stories and challenge negative narratives? Joining us to talk about this in Valencia, Spain, Mihaela Dragan is an actress and playwright and the co-founder of Romania's Giuvlipen theatre company. Nicoleta Bitsu is the president of the Democratic Federation of Roma from Romania, as well as the co-chair of the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture. She joins us from Bucharest. Also in Bucharest, Alina Șerban is an actress and the founder of the Untold Stories theatre company. And in Worcester, UK, Lisa Smith, news editor of the Traveller's Times, and that's a website covering Roma news and culture. Hello, everybody. Good to have you here. Mihaela, I'm just thinking, when you're thinking up a piece of theatre and you're thinking, how does this help people understand the Roma better? Where do you start? What are you trying to do?
Well, we created Roma feminist theater Giuvlipen like an answer to all the way in which, very stereotypical way in which Roma people are presented in art, in the public discourse, in society. So we wanted to show to the people that Roma art is contemporary, is alive, is progressive. We are feminists, we are progressive women, and we want to share our stories because there's a lot of stigma around Roma people and included to the Roma women. So we want to say other stories.
Alina, going back a few years ago, there was a time when you and some friends got together and you did performance street art, using the kind of words that people use about Roma people. Can you repeat some of those phrases so that we understand what we're talking about here, and then how you turned that into performance art?
Yes, back in 2009, when there were no cultural shows about Roma people and they were vilified or demonized or exotified, I went on the streets with few actors and spoke about these derogatory sayings like, don't play with the gypsy. If you behave bad, I'm going to take you to the gypsy. Don't be such a gypsy. Or even from the pop songs that we know, only you bring out the gypsy in me. So we go on the street and look into the eyes of the people and to say, hey, I am a human just like you. And you know what? I didn't have your privilege to get where you are. But if I would get the chance, I will. So through the art, we managed to come closer to the people and to, as Mihaela was saying, to bring our stories and show how human we are and how beautiful. in all the senses.
I'm just thinking, Nicoletta and Lisa, when you're hearing that, when you're hearing these clear insults, how do you react? Nicoletta, you go first.
I will let Lisa. She's younger.
She's passing the buck here. You need more time to think. Lisa, when you hear these insults, when people say these words, these phrases, what's your reaction?
Well, I think it's a lack of education on the part of those people. A short film that we looked at to try and combat negative stereotypes and perceptions of what it means to be Roma was recently I wrote and produced a short film called Hachi, and what this looked at, Hachi in Romani, British Romani language translated means hedgehog, and this was because the lead's character, he was very much an introvert at heart, and he had this perceived really hard exterior. And the story was actually based on my brother's true life experience, and it was him as a Romani man, as a Romani gay man, and as a Romani gay man who was profoundly deaf. And I think film and moving image in particular can be a very, very powerful tool to be able to convey those stories that are untold and that we do not get to hear of very often. I would say what I wanted to provide with that was a snapshot for an outsider, just to have an insight into this person's lived reality, this person's lived experience. And as we know, we're all so many things, and so often or not, Roma, we get defined by this the one thing, and that is simply being Roma. And one of the things that I see Roma artists challenging across Europe and across the world is that they're challenging what is this perception, what is this rhetoric, and what it means to be Roma within our own communities and actually within outside of that.
So picking up on what you mentioned there, Lisa, I wanted to bring in the perspective of someone online. This is Peter, who tweeted that most of this discrimination that you all are talking about begins with those stereotypes. Almost everyone has heard of the discriminatory stereotypes of Roma communities, he says, in Romania specifically. He goes on to say the most negative is that you can never trust anyone from a Roma community. That stereotype is mainstreamed in popular culture. And then more particularly, he says, another ignorant stereotype is that Roma women will seduce, they will deceive, and they will rob their non-Roma lovers. This stereotype is also in popular culture. Nicoletta, can you talk to us about this particular part of that stereotype as it affects women?
Yes, of course I can. And it's, I mean, I'm trying to talk about this for the last 26 years. And I just, I'm sure that my Romani women fellow artists will do more than I will succeed to change the minds of people more than I did. But when I hear this, I have mixed emotions because in a way, I realize that the discourse about Roma and stereotypes didn't change since 19th century. So this is really sad. And in the same time, after 26 years of activism, I have the impression that every day I have to take it over and over again from the beginning and to explain from everything. But the conclusion is that our societies are really systematically and systemically reproducing the same stereotypes through all the institutions. And this is very bad. And we are talking about a population which is on the territory of Europe since the 14th century and which was part of the formation of the national states across Europe, but they are not there. We are still foreigners on our own lands, in our own nations, in our own states. So this is really very deep rooted in the minds and systems of our society. And of course, we can fight with. Sorry?
If I can add to that, exactly to the root that Nicoletta was saying, nobody or very few know about the history of Roma in the Romanian countries, which is rooted in slavery. So when we speak about the situation of Roma women nowadays, and we stigmatize them for being in situations of early marriages, and we stigmatize traditionalism, we do not think about the fact that these early marriages come from the past, when women were used to be raped by the boyars, by the owners. So when we do not know about this very, very dark history of slavery, of Holocaust, how can we heal the present?
So, Alina, I'm just going to slow you down a little bit because you brought up huge chunks of the Roma community's history, huge chunks.
Yes.
So I want to stop with let me start with your play here, The Great Shame. There's a little clip that you sent us, and it talks about what you've been talking about, but in a real life conversation. Have a look.
Maică, am închiriat apartamentul. Îi ghidești la niște oameni și ea n-a vrut și acum...
Ce oameni?
La niște țigani, nu mai primesc niciun bani de la ăștia și... Nu știu ce trebuie să învăț din asta. Am rămas ca prostul cu buza umflată.
Că sunt oameni și oameni, acum trebuie să înveți ceva din asta.
Trebuie mai mult de atât la cât mă costă și oricum mai multe am de învățat despre mine, Magda, decât despre alții. Am să fiu și eu mai responsabil. Ce?
Mai devreme și țigani și eu te rog să zici rom.
Ești imposibil. Nu, dar de când cu doctoratul ăsta pe bune, parcă ai luat o rază, n-am...
Dar ți-am spus că țigan înseamnă sclav, ți-am mai zis asta de 10 ori.
Magda, crezi că eu nu știu prin ce...
So, Lina, I'm watching a play here, but I'm being educated at the same time. Who's your audience?
Sure.
Who are you talking to right there?
It's a wide audience. It's not only for Roma or Romanian. It's for people across the countries and coming from different backgrounds. Because first of all, we're all humans. So it's just that because of this continuation of stereotypes, we don't get to see each other, to know each other's histories. So when people come to see this play, they just see some people that they only hear through the media when they are stereotyped and so on and so forth. But when they see a play and when they see a film about Roma people made through our vision, because that is a major problem that is always missing, our point of view of the story, I would say it bridges. Art makes this bridge between people, so we come maybe at the middle of this bridge and say, hey, I respect your differences, and if I can, I will empathize with your pain. That's the beauty of art. People don't read history anymore, or don't really, write in brochures about discrimination. They want to see real people like me. As when we speak about early marriages or the history, here am I. I come from a traditional Roma family. I refused early marriage to go to university. So when people speak about this Roma people that are in communities and hidden, they should just see that amongst them there are a lot of invisible Roma.
Nicoletta?
It's also hate. I mean, it's about hate. I think it's when we speak about the image, I mean, the representation of hate, it's a deep hate and fear. It's not only hate, it's fear. And it's not racism and discrimination. It's a fear of getting too close to Romani women, because Romani women are exotic, because Romani women are dangerous. And of course, in all the history of the world and the human being, the hate and the fear, the representation of fear and hate of unknown was through the images of women in general, and the witches, for example, in time of the Catholic recession. So in case of Roma, it's the same. The peak representation and the most stereotyped and charged representation of the fear against Roma is through the images of Romani women, and that's what I mean. My colleagues are trying to educate the public that we are not all the same, and that's a mistaken image of ourselves.
Well, Nicoletta, there's someone here who may agree with you, and she's fighting back in her own way through song and music. This is Ria Knight. She sent us a video comment on how she's trying to change the narrative and reclaim it for herself. Have a listen.
Hi, I'm Raya. Recently I've been involved in developing a production called Roma Army with the director Romani in Berlin. And one of our main objectives when developing this production was about reclaiming our narrative and rebranding our image as a method of self-empowerment for us and for the wider community. Something I wish people knew about us as a community was that actually we're just like you. And while we have a massive importance placed on family and a respect for our elders and on our community as a whole, there's so much stigma surrounding us that I feel like the human element, the fact that we are humans just like you, gets lost. And that's what I wish people knew.
No, Mihaela, you heard what she said about what she wants people to take away from her work. What is it that you want people to take away from yours, and what's been the feedback so far?
Yes, so it was Raya, my colleague from Roma Army Theater Show from Berlin. When we speak about Romani women, how they are represented in society, in the public discourse, there are a lot of stereotypes. We have created a show that is called Gajo Dildo, with all these stereotypes about Romani women, that they are seen as mysterious, exotic, submissive. These are the biggest cliché about us. Very often is a hypersexualization that non-Roma men are doing regarding us. So we do a lot of criticism in this theater show in Gajo Dildo about all these cliché. So these are the labels that we want to remove. We are Romani women. We are not submissive. We are not exotic.
Mihaela?
Yes.
There are some areas that you're going into that if you had them, talked about them on a discussion show, if you talked about them face to face, they would be incredibly taboo. That show in particular has issues of LGBTQ issues, sexuality issues. How are the audience, how is the Roma audience reacting?
Well, we had very different reactions. First of all, because it's a very provocative show. It speaks about sexuality of Roma women, and it says the story of a Romani lesbian woman. So I think it was for the first time in Romania when we opened the discussion about LGBT Roma. So of course, there was a lot of Romani men, especially from the Roma community, who reacted in a very negative way, because they say, well, we deal with the anti-racist message if we include the issues about LGBT Roma. We don't have so many. This is not our issue of the Roma movement. And we tried to tell them, well, we have an intersectional perspective. These people are existing in our communities and they face homophobia, racism, or sexism if we speak about trans or lesbian Romani women. And of course, we receive negative reaction from the conservative Roma people. But this is our role, to change perspectives and create a progressive discourse.
Sure.
But in the same time, we had a lot of Romani LGBT audience that came to us, and for the first time, they felt represented.
Representation is so important. Lisa, I see you nodding there as Mihaela is speaking. I want to show everybody this, the Traveller's Times, your news editor at the Traveller's Times. When I actually went on to your Twitter feed, I found this story. New exhibition of photos from Roma youngsters in Glasgow helps show the whole picture. And then this, we youth must never give up the fight for Roma equality. Read the latest. These are images that you don't necessarily see, let me say, mainstream media. How do you combat that, Lisa?
Well, this is why Traveller's Times exists, is to try and combat the huge amount of negative stereotyping that happens in mainstream media. And an untold story in the UK, very similar to Alina's point in Romania, is that we have an untold history of deportation, slavery, execution, and children's displacement being taken away from Romani families on the basis that they are just Roma. And I really liked Alina's point when she said, you know, the power of art. And I think that's the message that we're all trying to say here, is the power of art is humanitizing people. And what I felt was how we can use the power of art to be more creative in our actions. We made a short film, actually, at Traveller's Times called Oldest Show on the Road, that highlighted the persecution through time and history, and how now we are people and we're situating ourselves as empowered individuals, you know, who are telling our own narratives and are increasingly creating and writing our own discourses.
I hear you there, but I want to throw in one other perspective, because we're talking about art to change the narrative, but people online are reminding us, of course, there is not just one narrative. So this is Dolani on Twitter, who says, although some Roma groups are enthusiastic about creating a shared identity, discourse of the Roma has pointed out the difficulty in a non-territorial, traditionally itinerant group seeing itself as united. Another person picks up on that theme, and Jonathan, he tweets in, he says, we're not a single group, and that's what he wants people to know. We're not a single group with a single culture across the continent. It would be like talking about the worldwide African community. Roma have many cultures, languages, religions, and customs, and these make us richer as a people. Nicoletta, can you give us that perspective, keeping in mind that, yes, people are trying to represent their community, but it is not then just one monolithic community, and the difficulty in that?
It's not only one monolithic community, and this is driven by the local histories, national histories, and we have been influenced by the majority religions and majority history. But this, and all the artists are trying to, and they are succeeding to represent the diversity of the stories we are holding with us for the centuries. But in the same time, I have to admit that it's a sense of belonging to a transnational people sense. So it's like we are so diverse, and we are not only diverse in terms of geographies and cultures, we are so diverse in sense of sexual orientation or religion or other diversity, which are, or social class including. So, but I have to admit that being 26 years an activist on an international level, there's a sense of belonging when you come together. There's a sense that you, especially for artists and activists and people, it's a sense that you really have a common fight. So you have a common fight.
Elena, what did you want to add?
If I can quote something from The Great Shame, the play about Roma slavery, is that at one point a character says, you know, what is Roma identity? What I identify with the feeling of hate. I identify with the feeling of being rejected. Because even though we are so different and unique in our own way, when we feel the belonging is sometimes when I connect to Mihaela's fight and to Lisa's fight and other women's fight, when they too are discriminated on this base of being from the Roma community. So this feeling of, I will connect with rejection because I know on my skin what is that like.
So Guess, I want to share this quote with you. It's from Krimina Budinova, and Krimina says, if the mainstream media remains closed off to Roma perspectives, quote is right here on my laptop, then Roma should find alternatives, create alliances with independent journalists, and use the digital space to promote their views and their work, which is what I hear that you are doing. Malika, what do you have to add?
I will end with this comment from someone who describes herself as an American Roma woman. She's watching us live on YouTube, and she says, I hope that we can also work and support each other transnationally, because I relate it to what Alina was saying earlier and what all the panelists are saying, even though I'm in the US.
There's nothing so pointless as talking about art. You have to see it as well. Let me end with a little bit of the Roma Army trailer. Have a look at this.
Ist der Kampf der Nicht-Weißen dieser Erde gegen ihre Unterdrücker. Wie kannst du nicht gewalttätig sein, wenn deine eigenen Leute versklavt, ermordet und sterilisiert wurden und immer noch in Brand gesteckt, deportiert, erniedrigt, unterdrückt und diskriminiert werden?
That was a Gorky Theatre in Berlin. Thank you, Mihaela, Nicoletta, Alina and Lisa for being part of our conversation. This conversation is a big one. It continues online. We'll see you there. #AJStream. Thanks for watching.